But without further ado, thanks once again for supporting us and coming to the lecture. This is going to be how to read the story of your opponent's discards. This will be a theory strategy presentation lecture that is very near and dear to my heart. It's very fundamental, I think, to my style of play and to becoming a good player. And I think it's something that's not necessarily super evident. And in this like theory and strategy, I think I really improved the quickest off of it. Once I started implementing this into my game and thinking through this and really practicing it, I got a lot better really quickly. So I am super duper excited to share it with y'all. So, even though we're getting in with how to read our opponent's discards, what I want to do is start with a what would you do situation. And I promise this is going somewhere, so bear with me. So, in our seat right now, we have the South player. Game is pretty early. We're in East 3. Scores are fairly close. It's going to be the American Riichi Mahjong League rule set. Basically, Akanashi with flat Umas 15-5 in a league setting. Nothing too fancy. So our player in the pilot seat, Navitas, has a decision to make. Do we want to call this 6-0? If we do so, we will secure an Itsuyaku. We will have one Dora as well. We will have the 7-so. And we'll be locked on the 3. Now, there are 3 of the 4-sos out. So the 3-so, not necessarily the most usable tile. There's also a lot of those early Sozu. We see all of the 1 of Sozu, as well as 2 of the 2-sos. And with the 3-4-sos, the 3-so should be very hard to use. So the question is, do we want to call this, or do we maybe want to greed, try and keep our hand closed, wait for another, or maybe take it, even do something crazy other than take the Tempai on South and throw 1, 2, 3 pin? There are a couple trains of thought here, but most people are going to say, you know what, it's getting a little late into the round. We secure 2 Han and Akanashi, not too bad. The 3-so should be hard to use, so there's a good chance it comes out. And worst comes to worst, somebody reaches, I'm scared. I have both Norths to throw afterwards, as well as an abundance of lower Sozu safety. So odds are I'm going to take the call. And in fact, in this game, that's exactly what Navitas did. They called the 6-so through the south for the early Tempai. Now that's from Navitas's perspective. You'll notice on the right, in the Shimosha perspective, is me on West Seat. Which is why, after I saw that, my line of thinking was this. Why would they do that? Why would Navitas decide to throw that, to chi the 6-so and throw the south? And in that one question is a very complicated line of reasoning and pattern of questions you have to ask yourself that, done correctly, can give a plethora of information and help you play the best game you can. So we're going to come back to that. Right now, what I want to do is go over the fundamental principle of how to read the story of your opponent's discards. And that's basically this. Every player is making decisions for a reason. Whenever you do something, just like in that what would you do, there's a reason for it. You have a logic, a strategy involved. And with that, you need to assume that everybody else is going to as well. Whenever somebody does something, they're basing whatever they did, that certain decision, on some sort of reasoning, whatever it may be. And again, that fundamental idea is what is going to drive how to more effectively read discards. So there are a couple different facets of how to read discards, or questions that you should go through and things to consider. The first one is going to be the hand history. It's basically, what did this player do previously in the hand? When did they make calls, if they made calls? When did they discard important tiles? If they're, say, discarding Dora, when did that happen? Was there a noticeable change during the hand? Maybe they are playing whatever tile willy nilly, a Ricci happens, and then all of a sudden they have a lot of Tadashis. They're playing safe tiles to the Riichi. Maybe they're folding out. That is the types of things we're considering when we're considering the hand history for reading the discards. So again, in this example, I have labeled out who made what call when. So as we can see, our left player, Kamicha, called this 3-mon and then threw a second 9-pin from hand very early. Later down the line, they called the 7-mon. Again, that's after they folded 2 9-sos out of the hand, played the 2-so, called the 7-mon, and dropped the 2-pin very near Dora and locked one in. We want to think about that. And then after dropping this West, which I believe was dropped right here after the 2, the 6-pin was called. So our Toyman, seeing West drop after this 2-so, calls West, drop 6, 6-pin's called, and then the third call for this player is the Green Dragon. And that is the complete history of the hands. These are the things that happen. So we can notice for this player things we're thinking about. They threw 2 terminal pairs from their hand, both the 9-pins and the 9-sos, one after a call. One completely after a call, one kind of committing to the second one after the call. As well as that, after all these Tanyao, these all simples calls, locking in Adora, we threw a Green Dragon from hand. A lot of the time, a player would keep that in order to have a safe tile, especially if they have good shape left in their hand that they don't really need to fish another Tanyao shape. And especially after the third call and them dropping that green, this is a pretty good indicator this player is most likely Tempai on our left. Same across. The West was called, and then also we have this White Dragon out a little bit later after one just got dropped. Maybe we're still fishing about. We kind of want to start thinking about why did they drop that white? Those are the rough examples of the hand history uh, statuses you want to consider. Now, the next thing is the board game state. What is currently happening on the board/game in relation to that given player? This one's a little bit more complex. It's not as straightforward. There's a lot more questions you're going to want to ask. The first one, how many points are they at in relation to the other players? What's their score? How close or far are they from the other 3 players on the table? What round is it? Are we really early in the game and we have a lot of flexibility, or are we getting into all last? And really, if we want to accomplish something in the game, we're running out of time. What conditions do we need? Do we need to get first? Do we need to just avoid fourth? Do we need to kind of skate by and get a certain score? As well as, are there any reaches or important hands/things on the board they should consider? Is there anything that they really want to internalize whenever they're making decisions, and that is going to factor into the decisions they make? Now, again, a lot of things to think about. So let's look at a hand and let's look at all the different conditions that the 2 important players on the table face. So we have this game right here. There is a lot of things happening. This is, again, an Armel game. So it's a league setting. It's near the end of the season. It's in session 5 of 6. So still some wiggle room later, but we kind of want to start making plays, especially if we're not doing too good. The Dora is the Chun and then the 5M. And I don't have it labeled here, but this 3-pin con, I believe, was like right before this 5 or this 2. It's at the end of row 1, start of row 2, when this con 3-pin happened and 5M ends up being the new Dora. So across the way, Korak Toyman is in second on this board with over a Mangan of difference between me in the pilot seat in third place and Kevin, the dealer, Fogless, in first place. So very, very far from being able to pass or get past. Now, again, Latadora on the board, especially later, so it's a little bit easier, but has to have a big hand. Might also just want points. The other thing is, especially after this 2 got called, there is no visible Yaku. There's nothing obvious. It can't be Sanshoku in any way. Technically, it could be Itsu, but if we notice our very hands, there's 1, 2, 3 7-sos, 2 8-sos, and 3 9-sos on the board. So Itsu is going to be a little bit hard to get. And especially with Dora Chun and none on the board, and White Dragons, Green Dragons both out. The only 2 Yakuhai left are going to be the Red Dragon Dora Chun and the Southwind. Now, when Korak started playing this hand, the 5M was not Dora. So this was a very cheap hand unless we'd have Chun. We could just be trying to end the game. Maybe it's South Nomi, but very scary threat with the Chun. The other player we have to consider is QETC on the right. We're in fourth by over 4K. We have some ground room or some ground to make up. We are more than 330 away from fourth or from third. We either have to sumo that 330 to push me below to Gyakuten, as well as we're not really close to second in any way. Hanuman Direct would have to be on second place Korak across. Even on sumo, it's very tight. You just barely pass. So maybe on Hanuman Sumo we get there, but in Akanashi, very, very hard to do. The other thing is that they die mean conned on this 3 and open the hand in general. Uh, they open the hand. It's Akanashi. Riichi is your bread and butter maker. And we also die mean con. We fish this con for more value. So in my mind, that's a sign of desperation. And then we also threw this one pin that's now Kabe. So these are the board game state things that where I'm thinking about these players and what hands they want to play. These are the board and game state things that I want to consider from their perspective. Basically, they have these considerations and are using them to guide their decision. Why? And then the last big piece of knowledge that's going to help you read the story of your opponent's discards is player knowledge. Basically, what do you know about that player? Are they opening a lot? Are they very aggressive? Are they defensive? They're staying back in the hand. They're not making calls. They're doing a lot of folding. Are they a snake player? Do they worship the bot and think efficiency and win rate is the end all be all and that'll guide their decisions? Are they pushing super valuable hands really frequently? When push comes to shove, there's some danger on the board. They have their big Mangan Hanemans on board. Are they pushing them and fighting for them? Um, the thing about this is it's easier said than done. If you're in a league or tournament setting like Armel or maybe a one-day tournament, maybe you get some outsider knowledge. Oh, hey, do you know anything about this player? Yeah, they like to do this, this, this. Maybe I've played against them a couple times. Even in tournament, you might be able to ask one of your buddies, hey, you played against this player earlier. Did you notice anything? Like, did you see any habits? On ladder, that gets a lot harder. On ladder, you're facing random people 99.9% of the time. You don't really have anything other than one game. There are still some things you can see again if somebody's doing weird pushes. Maybe they're pushing for a one-on hand against like a dealer Riichi and they win it. You go, okay, they don't really respect that. Little notes like that can help you, but again, you're going to need to adapt that into the given situation, and easier said than done. So, with those things under consideration, what I want to do is actually take a look back at the hands earlier. So, if you'll notice, this is the first hand that I showed. That what would you do? Navitas, Lucas on the left, Cheed that 6 and we remember it was for Itsuyaku, and then played the south from hand. And now it goes to my decision, and I have to decide what the heck just happened. So, looking at the discards, I got to be aware of a couple things. There's a lot of Manzu, Tadashi Manzu, Tadashi Manzu. We're fighting, we're dropping all these good middle ones. And then we have this one Sozu, and then we have the Haku, this one pin, Chun from hand, and then call south from hand. Now, couple things to note. This could be a very expensive hand. They have just made a call in the door suit after dropping a ton of middle Manzu tiles. That's a bit scary. We're a bit worried about that. The other thing, they were keeping these honor tiles much, much further into the round. Instead of keeping these central, like 4-mon, 6-mon tiles, they kept the Haku all the way until the second was dead. The Chun they kept for a while. The South they kept in hand and only dropped once this call is done. So they were fishing these Yakuhai tiles. That's a bit concerning too. That being said, The one thing that can help us is they did drop this one so. Normally, if you're playing a Honitsu, you would keep this one so further than these Yakuhai tiles. So it is a bit weird that they did drop that one so and then kept all these Yakuhai tiles. So, from my perspective, the thing I'm thinking about is there's probably a hand being fished for here or some sort of really quick tempai maybe, but odds are it may not be too expensive because this one so before all these Yakuhai means Honitsu is a little less likely. The other thing is Navitas is an 8 Dan, a Ho, a very good, very experienced player. They have really solid reasoning. They have played for thousands and thousands of hours across multiple platforms and situations. So they are very knowledgeable and they know exactly what they want to do and what they value. So they're not just throwing this one so because I didn't think about it. I was on autopilot, whatever. Navitas is doing that for a reason. Now, I also know Navitas is a Snake Shack member. They're going to value the Naga ability and the Naga read. And for a Honitsu, Naga would always say keep this one so in most scenarios, especially with all these Yakuhai unpaired. So, with all of that reasoning, even in this short amount of time, I have decided Navitas either has a cheap hand that's very close to winning, potentially Tempai that I don't need to worry about, or has some weird far off Chinitsu nonsense that's probably not. I'm basically pretty certain Navitas has a fairly cheap hand. The only thing I have to worry about is maybe a weird Tanyao shape, and there's a lot of Dora there. But I have a Dora, and there's some shapes already around it, 2/6s, 2/8, so I'm not too worried. So now, because I figured that out, I can play the hand with it. I decided to do 3-pin here. That
Yeet.
decision is whatever. And now we have a Riichi from Eric. Eric is a very standard kind of snake-esque player as well. Used to be very defensive, being a little bit more aggressive. Matthew across is a very strong Snake Shack player again, so very valuable in efficiency, all those things. So from hand, one so comes out, and that is a huge tell right there. So one so safe to this Riichi. Same across. We were keeping this south, Matthew was, and we played it safe to the Riichi. Presumably, it just came out. It's not a Yakuhai, so it should be a cheaper deal in. When this one so comes out from Lucas, that tells me two things. A, there's no chance this is Honitsu. Why would you keep this one so and not pair the other one? Because if you had both of those, you would have it from here. You would have it before this one so and this one so you'd be able to pawn it later with no ones on the board. Why would you be the first to drop it if you're going through Honitsu, especially if it's paired? The other thing is with this one, odds are we might be folding now. Riichi on the board is scary. We're not really open. We're not Honitsu. We're not opened with anything scary. So this might be the start of a fold. So now that Lucas is out, or presumably, I'm assuming Lucas is out, I can decide, do I want to push against Eric's Riichi, knowing Lucas is cheap and inexpensive or out of the hand, and not really knowing what's going on with Matthew, but seeing some folding things. And I can use that to affect my decisions. Now, here's a very important thing. Matthew, dealer, cheese Vormon drops second south. Their dealer. Renshan plus EV. No other way to say it. Repeating his dealer is good. And we see one south and then second south, so that has to be the pair cut from the hand. It technically wasn't 100% Genbutsu to dealer, even though it was extremely safe. So it's not like we're full folding. And we opened up past dealer. We opened up past this Riichi. Matthew, again, very good player across. So there is a reason he is doing this. He is not going to throw away and piss away points just cause, especially when it is East 3 and everybody is close. There is zero shot Matthew would do that. So now I got some red flags, some warning signs from Matthew. North, pretty innocuous. Don't have to worry about that. 6-pin from hand. Now, again, this call here was weird. 6-pin is completely Genbutsu. And I'm assuming Matthew is reading the same thing I am about Lucas, that Lucas is probably leaning towards being out, if not out already. So this might be a fold, but I want to keep an eye on the situation. I'm not 100% on board with this is a fold, and I want to be careful about what Matthew's playing, especially with 7 so being a somewhat easier to use Dora. I have 2 of them, but there's 2 I don't see if Matthew has both of them. That is a 5,800 point hand, not something you want to deal into. So we'll play, and then the 7 mon, and look what happened. Matthew opened for the 4, had the 2, 4, 6 pin shape, drew 3 pin, dropped that 6 for Tenpai, and then waited on 4 mon, 7 mon, and got the win. Cheap, but got the win. And so with reading Matthew's story and the story of the board, especially with this Mawashi into that, I was able to discern that Matthew probably was playing and pushing a hand, may have been folding, and again, probably cheaper since I can see 2 of the 7s. So from this board, there was a lot I was able to discern. If we remember Lucas's hand too at the beginning of the lecture, we were playing Itsu, so with the 1 so and the Norths out, that was a full fold. Again, a read I was making in the middle of the game that I was completely right on. So that is one example of how we're able to read hands. That's the one we were doing in the beginning. But let's go ahead and let's take a look at another example. Because again, this is very complex in that there's 100 million different combinations and so many different things that come up, and you have to be able to ascertain what's what in each given scenario. So we're playing here. I'm dealer. I have this sort of Yakuhai hand. Good things to think about. Chun gets called. We're dropping 982. Nothing crazy. We drop 2 so from hand. 7 pins cheat, and now 3 pin is dropped. Now we want to be a little bit mindful, especially with this South. So before this South, we're thinking, probably just a normal hand, 1 Han. Maybe they play a 5 mon. They have a Dora, maybe 2 of them. It's a 3 Han hand, whatever. When you see this middle 3 pin into this South, immediate flashing warning signs. What is going on? There are 2 kind of stories that I'm reading from Zalong's hand on the right. Story number 1. We have a quick hand with good shape. We called the Chun. We cheated the 7. We didn't need the 3. We have good Ryanmins, whatever types of weight. And we're either waiting on a pair, or we just wanted to keep the South as a safe tile because maybe we have Ryanmin pair. And then this South is just extra fodder. If somebody reaches, we have a completely safe tile or a fairly safe tile without breaking the hand. That's story number 1. Story number 2 is that we are doing a bit of fishing. I've dropped a couple Pinzu, 1, 2, 1 pin, and the 7. We called the 7. We called the Chun. We did nothing but drop Sozu and Manzu, even though they're kind of outside. And then we kept this South later than this middle 3 pin, something that goes against normal efficiency. That means that we might be fishing for a Honitsu. We might be trying to find ourselves a Mangan. Maybe we look for a pair of these Souths to get our second Yakuhai, catch someone off guard who has the last. The rest of our hand are these nice Pinzu shapes. And all of a sudden, this whatever burger hands that I don't really care about because I'm pushing this double Yakuhai as dealer, especially when tone is worth 2. Against the 1 hand, I might be pushing into Mangan, and that's something that I have to consider and be very scared of. So those are the 2 stories that I'm thinking about against Zalong. And what would you know? Max, very next turn, drops this Haku that's not seen on the board, and all of a sudden deals into Yakuhai, Honitsu for 8k. So again, on a 1 singular decision, this chi into the 3 pin cut, and then especially this from hand South, instead of having absolutely no idea what is going on, what's happening, why did we do that? I have 2 pretty credible reads that affect what I'm doing on the board. If I'm playing nothing into the Honitsu, I don't care. Push away. It'll be cheap. They have Dora Anko, bad beat. But if I'm playing things into the Honitsu, there is a chance, a very real chance, it is 3 or 4 Han, Mangan Honitsu potentially, and that is scary. And even though it wasn't me dealing in, that's something that from any spot you are going to want to consider. Now, while these situations are strong, and I think are very important to bring up, the thing is, there are weaknesses of this strategy. If players make incorrect decisions or they've frequently done so, their story starts to fall apart. You can't really read it, especially in lower level ladder rooms. People don't know what they're doing. They don't know how to play efficient. They don't know how to fish their Yaku correctly. They're flip flopping. That means that it's much, much harder to read their story correctly because it's all over the place. They're introducing whatever they want, whenever they want, without any logic or reasoning. So it doesn't really work there. The other thing is in certain situations, like if they hit good draws after a Mawashi, you can't really read the new story. If you Mawashi a shape and then immediately Riichi, you have nothing to go off of. They fished an entirely new shape, potentially, in order to kind of base their weight off of. The other thing is if it's early, like let's say double Riichi, again, there's no story to read. They had a tile to discard to get Riichi. It just is what it is. Later down the line, you can start to make some sense with defensive tiles or tiles that have passed. But again, with newer stories, there's nothing to really read into. So again, with early Riichis and weaker players, this strategy does not have as much relevance and is not as worth talking about. That being said, I think it still really matters. Again, in Riichi, you play for the best average scenarios. Players deviating from it will do worse more of the time anyway. Those high level Ho-Oh players that have been on the grind, these very good players are going to very consistently make good decisions. And the reason is it works. Simply playing the best statistical thing most of the time is going to get you the best statistical results. If you are a strong player, you are going to gravitate towards that one way or another. The players who are weaker and constantly making these mistakes, ruining their story, are going to win less of the time. That's just the fact of the matter. Um, and so with that, using this line of thinking, so using the what is the story of this person's hand, the more you use it as well, the easier it is to see when it doesn't apply. When players are making bad decisions, when it doesn't really matter what their story is because maybe it's early. All these situations where there's not much of a story to read, the more that you use this and practice this strategy, the easier it is to see this isn't relevant. I'm just going to play normal theory. Nothing to read into, nothing to suspect, no extra fanciness. I'll just play my EV. I will just fold out and play safe because I'm a million points ahead and have no reason to take risks. Whatever. So, again, the more you play, the easier it is to decide, I don't need this. And when it's not relevant, less brain load, good things happen anyway. So, might as well use it when you can. Now, I want to show one last hand. And this is, I think, the pinnacle of this strategy that I have been able to implement. This is a hand that is very, very important and very, very fresh in my memory because this is, I think, the best application of this strategy I have ever done. And this is starting to reach the peak of what you can discern and how it is relevant as a player. So we are in East 1 of an Armel game. We are in the last session of last season. To the best recollection, the player to the left of me, Tatanu, is very high up in the league. I'm pretty high, but nothing crazy. I'm not making a play on first. I believe also PNW Body is kind of the same way, maybe a little bit higher than me. And towards the bottom is Kevin across. Now, I know these players fairly well. Blake, I don't know the most amount of play. Tatanu, a very, very strong player, played at Worlds, making somewhat normal decisions, but definitely has some interesting quirks to the play that make him hard to read sometimes. But we're focused on Kevin across in the dealer seat. Now, Kevin, big friend of DC Riichi, one of our favorites, is a Snake Shack player through and through. Kevin is by the book. Kevin is doing everything to play hand win efficiency. He is folding out when things get dangerous and there is no value. Kevin is perfectly readable. Given 100 scenarios, Kevin will make the same decision, or given the same scenario 100 times, Kevin will make the same decision 100 times. Kevin will always do the same thing based on the book. I know this about Kevin. I know this going into the game. I've played him a good tens of times, so I'm very comfortable with this. I'm very knowledgeable about how Kevin plays and what to expect. So as we see in this hand, Kevin is going to start with this 1-3 Tadashi in the Manzu. Now, not only is that near Dora, but also it's Tadashi back to back. So the hand's probably not terrible. Now, we are dealer, so knowing what I know about Kevin, odds are we are playing efficiency shape or fishing something. We're either fishing a higher hand value or we are fishing a stupidly efficient shape, and the Kanchan was our least efficient. That being said, especially being around the Dora, odds are Kevin would never throw that 3M turn 2 unless we are Tenpai, but if we're Tenpai, Kevin's going to Riichi. Kevin is an efficiency by the book player. Riichi as dealer is just good. No Riichi, and we threw the 1-3 back to back. Odds are we're fishing a hand. I want to keep that in the back of my mind.
Home.
And then this call comes out. North call from 3-so. Now, a couple things about this. Kevin has dropped 1-3M turn 1 near the Dora, a good thing to fish, has committed against using it. Also, just called Offwind Yakuhai, the north. No Yaku there. And the 3S has come out from hand, a good, solid middle tile. That screams to me that Kevin is playing a Honitsu. The other thing that I know about Kevin and about the book is Kevin is not going to make calls willy-nilly. Now, what do I mean by that? I know that Kevin is a firm believer in Riichi is good value and do not overextend your hand. Do not just call to call. You want to be able to have as many defensive options as possible to fold out if you want to. Normally, Kevin will never, ever have a hand at 3 calls and will rarely even have a hand at 2 calls. And if Kevin is calling twice before calling Ron or Sumo, Kevin's got a lot of value or is just playing great shape quick. So when Kevin makes this off-wind call in the dealer seat, playing efficiency, throwing away close to Dora shape, knowing that Kevin doesn't really fish much and likes especially to play efficiency in the dealer seat, I know that Kevin has a reasonable shot at being Tenpai here. Especially when we see this East come out. This is Honitsu a reasonable amount of the time. Especially with the 2 West coming out, very reasonable. But also, Kevin is near Tenpai. When that East is thrown, something is up. Kevin needs Yaku. We haven't dropped a middle Pinzu shape. Odds are that if we're keeping the East over the 3, we're in Pinzu Honitsu. East Yakuhai is dead. White Yakuhai was not called. Green Yakuhai is not called. Kevin won't Daimon Con, so if we have Ankos of those, we're already there, but unlikely. That being said, I don't see a tune. And I know, especially because I think this was the second game of the night, and Kevin has been playing very defensively, reserved in the hand, trying to build value. Kevin's not going to overextend. Kevin's not making a million calls to run it down for Bakahon, which means that Kevin likely has more value. And what's Kevin's value here, especially if we're not fishing these Manzu around the Dora for a Honitsu shape, but we're playing Honitsu top tiles? Maybe Toy on Dora, super unlikely, but odds are Kevin has a Yakuhai Anko. That is my read on this table. Kevin has thrown this middle tile into this east. His dealer has no confirmed Yaku and has opened the hand when he has been fishing Riichis basically the entire time I've known him, unless it is efficient to do otherwise. So I am reading that Kevin has an Anko of the tune. 7-so comes out, 4 comes out. I'm keeping that in the back of my mind, making sure I try to track Dora. I'm a little bit worried about the 7. And what would you know? I play the 9-pin, and even though it's a cheap deal in, I was 100% right on the read from this singular North call that I so vividly remember during this singular game. And the subsequent East call that I was able to tell through my strategy, my player knowledge of knowing how Kevin plays, the board state, all these different factors that Kevin had an Anko of Tune in their hand, and I needed to be a little bit careful of dealing in. And I was right about it. And if we look at the hand, Kevin had that from High Pie. Kevin started with those tunes. And looking at the hand, seeing how Kevin played it, 100% consistent of what I would expect. Played efficiently, maybe fished a little bit of value throughout that 1-3. Had the Anko of Shun, so wasn't afraid to go auto, or wasn't going auto Zuke, no fear in calling that north, and wanted to play the efficiency. And in my mind, this is the perfect use and the perfect read of this strategy. In the hundreds of games that I've played, I don't think I have ever come close to making as pinpoint a read as that. A lot of compounding factors help this. Again, I know Kevin very, very well. I'm very, very comfortable against his style of play. I'm very comfortable with the rule set. But I wanted to show this example to show what the top of it looks like, what the absolute peak of reading the story of somebody's hand can give you, and just from a singular call, how you can tell somebody is Tenpai on Anko Tune when that's normally very, very unreadable. So with that, I want to ask, are there any questions about anything that was talked about or discussed during the lecture? I'll keep it open for just a couple seconds unless somebody has something that they're really goosing to ask.
Yeah, in that last example you gave, you started by bringing up Honitsu as a potential read of Kevin's hand, and then you shifted to Anko Chun, and I'm not sure why that shift occurred, because I would still have read it as a Honitsu.
So let's take a look. Again, we throw the 1-3 immediately. West comes out. North comes. Kevin throws this 3. Okay. West was dead. Reasonable. Then we throw this east. Kevin has passed this 8-pin. No pause, no nothing. So we don't need this 8. Is not fishing this green, which if we didn't want to fish the double east, we wouldn't fish the green.
Boom.
Has not taken this 4-pin. And has not taken this 5.
Okay. Yeah.
So there are a lot of different Pinzu that we have not called. We have not shifted our hand. We have not Tadashi'd. And again, Kevin is in the dealer seat and will play efficiency above all else. Renshan is plus EV, and I'm very, very comfortable knowing Kevin will do that. So especially with all those Tadashis and no Pinzu takes and all these coming out, while it was possible, and again, part of it was a bit of gut movement too, But I would expect Kevin to call that for a Tenpai. Again, possible it was Honitsu, but more likely, I would say, was that instead of having this crazy Honitsu hand where we don't need to Tadashi any Pinzu and we don't win off the 4, we don't need the 8, we don't win off the 5, that we have Anko Chun with just some random shape and we're ready to win off of it.
Yeah, at this point, yeah, I agree.
And again, even right here, I'm thinking it could be Honitsu, but I think it was actually right around this or the 8 where I go, Chun hasn't come, and Kevin would, without a doubt, have Anko Chun and make that call. Whereas if Kevin had North North and Chun, Kevin would not call the North immediately. And again, Kevin doesn't extend. And also, if you open on the North, it's 2 Han. That's weird. Kevin would not open for 2 Han as dealer on a Honitsu, I don't think. Especially if it was this close. He might have waited a bit.
Boom.
So all those kind of compacting things made me think in the moment, Kevin's got Chunanko. Odds are it's hopefully a cheaper hand, and he didn't magically get this Honitsu. I'm still a little bit worried. But again, in the back of the mind, I'm like pretty sure that is what the read is, Chunanko. Now, do I still play the North and deal in? And that would be bad in Honitsu as well. Yes, I absolutely did that. Why did I do that? We're human. I read that in the situation and I had a strong feeling it was Chun Anko. Sometimes you don't listen to yourself. If I had perfectly read it and I was perfectly confident, I probably would have started folding with the 8, the 6, things like that. But with a good hand, with this E Peiko, like Ryamen, Reach Pinfu, E Peiko, potential Tanyao, E Shanten, who am I to just say, you know what, Kevin's Tenpai, all fold? And that happens sometimes. Even if you perfectly read someone, sometimes you got to go down swinging. But yeah, for a lot of complicated reasons, that is why I would read that hand as Anko Chun over Honitsu. And again, just a lot of experience with Kevin and kind of knowing how he plays.
Cool, thanks.
Mm-hmm. And are there really quickly any other questions that people have? I'm going to take that as a no. So again, I really want to thank you guys for being members. We super appreciate you. I really hope you were able to get something out of this lecture. Again, this strategy is kind of, or in this line of thinking, is really at the core of my play. And I think it's something that people don't necessarily talk or focus on too much. And I think, again, it is super duper important to incorporate within your play and can just explosively increase your level of skill within the game.